everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Software Security. I'm thrilled to have Tanya Janca with me. She probably needs no introduction to many of you who are listening to this. She is a pioneer in application security. I've been a fan of her work for many years now. She is a celebrated author on application security, and she is a keynote speaker. She was a keynote speaker at RSA, where she talked about worst practices of DevSecOps. I've heard people talk about best practices, but here she is talking about the worst practices. So that's very important as well. And then she also did a keynote at AppSecOn 2023 with Vandana Verma, another AppSec stalwart, right? I'm like, you should see when they are together, they are birds of the same feather, right? Putting light on the application security challenges. So right now she has a new role, head of education and community at 𝗪𝗵𝘁. Tanya, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Raj. It's really nice to see you.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for being on the show here. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. I know with you and application security, we can really have maybe a series of podcasts, right? So I want to go back to a very pressing issue, which is in application security. People have been talking about application security for what, 20 plus years now, right? And the problem is still very big. It's not been solved, right? So I would like to chat with you about why you think solving the application security is so difficult. So if you can maybe start there, maybe top 3 things you think are the big challenges in this space.
Yes. So as you know, I'm really passionate about education. I think one of the problems is that we are graduating people all the time with zero security knowledge. So we teach them how to build software, but we don't teach them how to build secure software. So we're constantly compounding this problem by releasing people out into the world who are trying their best, but aren't fully equipped to do the job we need them to do. So that's one. So then the second one is scaling. So there's just not enough dollars, Raj. There's not enough dollars to hire enough people, which again, not enough people who have the skills and who want to come work for us for a price we can afford to do all the jobs. And so us trying to scale the security, that's hard. And then I'd say a third problem, which maybe this is not popular thought, but so someone I work with, Isaac Evans at 𝗪𝗵𝘁, he wrote an article where he's like, we need to make it more expensive to hack us, because right now there's very little risk. Like you get caught not very often if you do hacking. Not very often you get hacked, but the rewards are quite huge right now. And unfortunately, there's a lot of insecure software on the internet. And so as a result, like the risk for criminals is extraordinarily low. Like if you rob a bank in Canada, you go to jail or you die. You do not get away, like pretty much ever, if you do it in-person bank robbery. But there's lots of people that rob banks all the time, like doing cyber things. So we need, like, I agree with my colleague Isaac, we need to make it very, very expensive, giant pain in the butt in order to commit cyber crimes. And we need to make it risky and dangerous for the criminals. So if we can like fix some of those things, life would be so much better, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, you highlighted the issues very well there. It starts at the source of where the software developers are trained, right? I think software probably is the only space where security is not an integrated part of something we build. I can't imagine a house being built without security being in place. I cannot imagine an airplane being built without security as part of the design itself. But when it comes to releasing software, security, if at all, is an afterthought. Sometimes it's not a thought at all, right? So that's very good thing that you mentioned. And the second one that you talked about is lack of resources, right? So it seems like in my conversations with various application security leaders, I have seen that there's so many vulnerabilities that need to be fixed, but not enough resources, right? So just to put things in perspective, I'd like to share a conversation that I had And I was asking him to characterize the problem that he was dealing with. And what he said was, Raj, we ran our vulnerability scans for last week, and there were 10,000 vulnerabilities that came out of that one. That's the huge debt that they have. And in terms of the resources that they have to fix them, 100, maybe 200 at best, right? So then the question came about, how do you fix 10,000 with 100 to 200? And then the question came about, is it even worth fixing all 10,000, even if you had resources to fix all 10,000? Maybe not, right? I think you need to figure out what really matters to be fixed and how do you fix it, right? So how do you deal with a problem like that? You covered three great points. I couldn't agree more with you, especially the first point that you mentioned. Education is where it all starts. Many software engineers that come out, they are not trained in the art of writing secure software. I think software probably is the only field or only big field where I know security is not integral to building things. I can't imagine. Imagine living in a house where security is not thought of when building it, right? Or imagine flying in a plane where security is not thought of as part of designing a plane. But when it comes to software itself, you know what? People just ship it. Software security, if anything, is an afterthought, if it's a thought at all, right? So that's where we find ourselves in the problem that we find ourselves in. And that brings me to the second second thing that you mentioned, which is not having enough resources, right? With the situation the way it is right now, we are compounding the problem, as you said. It just reminds me of a conversation that I was having with a security leader some time back, and he was talking about a security scan that they did and the number of vulnerabilities that they have in their scanners, highlighted by the scanners. He said there are about 10,000 of them. And in terms of the resources, they have maybe resources to fix 100 of them, or if they stretch, maybe 150, 200 of them, right? So then the question comes, how do you address these vulnerabilities, right? And then we got talking, and we were talking about, is it even worth fixing all those 10,000 vulnerabilities, even if you had the capacity to fix all 10,000? If not, then what are the 100 that you need to fix, right? So given that, I'd like to get your opinion on how do you think teams can get a handle on this debt of vulnerabilities or technical debt that they have in fixing the problems?
I have so many thoughts, Raj. Okay, so Raj and I saw each other in person at OWASP Global AppSec last month, which was awesome. Yeah. And I saw this talk by this guy named 𝗷𝗵𝗁. And so I've been following him a long time. He's awesome. And he put a thing into words that I've been thinking for a long time. So it's our job to reduce the risk for our organization in the most effective way possible. And fixing 10,000 bugs in a row isn't necessarily the best way to actually reduce risk, right? Yeah. And he used the expression burning down risk, which I really like. And so you and I have discussed this before, but let's discuss it so everyone can hear it. So I feel like a lot of the problem is scaling and prioritization. And so if we look at an app, so let's say we have 200 apps, right? But maybe 5 of those are mission critical to our organization, right? Like maybe, so for instance, in the government, the governmental websites are mission critical. It's not that the information on it is mission critical, but if it goes down, you might not know this, the public freaks out. They get really afraid if the government website goes down. And so it has to stay up. It's mission critical. Yeah. So are these bugs in the mission critical apps? No. Okay. So that, that lowers the prioritization a little bit, right? And then what if it's got really sensitive information in it? What if the information is completely public? Like I had an app attacked once, and it had SQL injection, which is very, very bad. However, it was a read-only user. The database had recently been hardened, and all the data in there was publicly available. It was actually data we were trying really hard to get, we were trying to market to people. And so we realized there was like, yes, they could go and steal this data that we're giving away for free, but there was nothing else they could actually do. So yes, we need to fix it. We fixed it the next day though, rather than calling everyone in at 8 p.m. Right? Like I looked at it and I'm like, you know what, we're okay. So I feel like the context really matters when we're deciding what we want to fix. So that's one thing, like prioritizing what truly matters and what will really actually burn down risk for our organization and make us safer. But then you had some thoughts too. Did you want to add more, or should I just keep going?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, like what you say is very true in terms of finding the mission critical applications and finding what the making sure that those things keep running, right? The couple of other things that I have seen that really make sense when identifying the right problem to fix are, for example, is this application something that's internet facing or is it behind the firewall? Right? Is this vulnerability in that? So maybe prioritize the one that's internet facing so that it's not exploited. And also the second thing is looking at the threat intel. So while CVSS score, I see a lot of organizations putting a lot of emphasis on the CVSS score. It's 10, let's go fix it. But the thing is, CVSS scores, they tell only part of the story, right? They don't tell the likelihood of something like that to be exploited. For example, if we mix that with threat intel, right? Now you can say that somebody else has exploited a particular problem. We might have a CVSS 4.0, right? I mean, but maybe it's been exploited again and again because it's very easy to exploit. Maybe there should be a higher priority than CVSS 10 on a system that's behind the firewall, it's never been exploited on an application that's not mission critical, right? So when you start putting multiple layers into your filtering process, is when we start burning down. I'm like going from 10,000 down to maybe 5,000, down to maybe 3,000, maybe down to 2,000, right? So those are the things that I would say. Would you like to add any other factors to this prioritization?
Yeah, so imagine your app has some sort of legislative or regulatory or audit sort of compliance that you have to. So like, what if HIPAA applies to it? And you have to fix certain things for that, or PCI compliance as an example, right? So it's like, maybe we have to fix it because of this rule set, or otherwise we'll lose our SOC 2 or whatever the thing is. So that matters too. There's also, so you were talking about if something's previously been exploited. If there's a Metasploit module that exists for the thing, that means complete morons can exploit it, right? Versus, like I remember when Spectre and Meltdown came out, the exploit was so complex, right? I'm like, I don't have 6 PhDs that are so ticked off at me that they want to spend an entire year trying to attack my site. And there's way worse stuff that I already have out there than this. So maybe I can wait until the patches don't crash everything, right? So like, is the fix gonna hurt? Like that might sound odd, but sometimes the fix itself hurts. Or sometimes, so like another thing that might sound weird, Raj, is so like, let's say you have an app you're actively working on, doing a fix on it is way easier than an app that you haven't opened for 6 years and you're not even sure how to publish. Like if you're in .NET, sometimes you have to change all your DLLs and your framework and stuff on your laptop in order to publish something that's old. Like we have all these old laptops where we would open up older crap so that we could publish a fix. So it's like, maybe it's going to actually take this huge effort to fix the same bug in one app versus another app we could fix 6 or 12 bugs in that same time because it's in a more modern framework, because we're actively releasing it, because we have a CI/CD versus we're releasing manually. Right? How much is it going to cost in time and money to fix each bug?
Right. So you're saying go for the low-hanging fruit first and then look for, is that what you're saying?
The high priority, lower hanging fruit.
Correct. High priority, but lower hanging fruit, in that you can get to that fix faster than these other systems that,
if you only have time for so many. Right.
So now, we have brought down the number of vulnerabilities further, right? Are there any other things that you think companies can do to focusing on maybe those 50 to 100 that you really need to focus on right now?
I try to figure out if things are true positives. So I'm going to sound a little snobby right now. But for instance, like a lot of the composition, software composition analysis tools, they'll say, you know, you have these 20 libraries and these 10 vulnerabilities in them. And I'm like, okay, but are they exploitable? If it's not exploitable, do I care? If it's a transitive dependency that's 10 layers down, can I even reach that code? And so I also want to find, like, are these things actually exploitable and causing serious business risk? Or is it like, this has a CVE rating of, because when I was a junior AppSec person, Raj, I didn't understand this because I basically had mentors and no training, and I just winging these things. And I remember like having two old apps that both had this old framework, and we're going to have to completely rewrite it to get off of this CVE 10 score. And it's like, do we want to spend $100,000 to $200,000 in a year of engineering time over CVE that, what if it's not even reachable in the code? Right. And so like how much work it is to find that out. So same with like, just because your tool reports injection, cross-site scripting, whatever, doesn't mean you have it. And so like, is it actually exploitable? Is it actually causing danger to my customers or users or employees, whatever? So removing false positives, ideally, like as soon as possible, or correlating with multiple tools if you can, or finding, like making sure that these things are actually causing real business risk.
Right. Yeah. So these are all kind of first principles to identifying the problems that matter, right? So the work of getting to where the multiple steps that we do still requires a lot of manual work if you are not tooled properly, if you don't have the right tools to help you out with that. So what kind of automation you think, what role do you think automation plays in a plethora of these tools that we have, right? I'm like RAS, DAST, SAST, AST, right? I'm like, there's just so many of them. And you need to figure out how it all comes together, right? So how do you see that?
I was thinking about being a smart aleck and just saying AI is going to fix it all, but I'm just kidding.
It's going to create more problems before it fixes it, right? Yeah. So
whenever I buy like a dress online, I get it advertised to me for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So AI is not there yet.
Right.
It's like, I already own this. I'm literally wearing it. You guys are so behind. So
exactly. Don't you see me wearing it, right? Exactly. I bought it already.
But I feel like automation is a huge, so what we're talking about is scaling, right? We want to do more with the same amount of people and not just make them work 1,000 hours of overtime and burn them out. That's not scaling, that's abuse. So what we mean is doing more with the same amount of hours and people. And so automation whenever possible. Like if you can have tools that tell you, that validate results. Some tools now are coming out with AI helpers that help you validate and triage. That's pretty nifty. There are some that are showing you analytics and trends and patterns. That's nifty. There are tools, you might work at one where they suck up the results of lots of tools and correlate them for you and try to help you figure out where your best bang for your buck is for your time. And so any type of automation like that, if we could do multiple types of testing, have those results all go together, you look at the app, it's like, oh, 2 tools found the same problem in the same place. I bet there's a problem there. That looks pretty bad. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think a combination of rules to basically filter them and a tool that can actually automate those rules so that you're in a very short period of time seeing the problem that needs to be fixed, very important, and then essentially doing it in a fast pace. Because one thing that we keep seeing around is that every company, if you see, is really a software company now. With the digital transformation that has happened, software is so central to an organization, whether it is shipping a service faster, at a lower price or making the user experience better, software is at the heart of it, right? Where has securing that is not. So our need for speed, it will not go away. It will only increase. The need for speed will only increase. So the combination of putting some smart rules like this and putting some automation like this, right, can make a dent and let software developers humming along at an ever increasing pace, right? So that's where I think I got the summary of the discussions that we had here, Tanya. So are there any concluding thoughts that you'd like to share?
I have more.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
other things we can do are delegation, and specifically delegation with shifting left. So delegation means convincing someone else to do this work who ideally has the information and is in the context so they can do a better job. So having a software developer fix the bug in their app rather than the AppSec team attempting to fix all these bugs without any context because they haven't worked on those apps before. So that's one thing. And I often work with teams to build security champions programs. So that you have that person on each team that's the security expert that can bridge that knowledge gap. But on top of that, so you and I have talked about shifting security left, pushing security left. So with automation, we can do that too, right? So yes, it's great to have a dashboard that the AppSec person looks at when they have time. But if we can like get up in that IDE, and so as they're coding, tell them that they've made a coding mistake. Hey, that looks like a secret. Are you really sure you want to put that in your code, Missy?
Yeah.
And even like doing security even earlier, like when you start a project, making super clear requirements about what you want. And if you think education needs to be done, like let's say they're doing like a new technology that they've never done before, like they've never made a serverless app before. So you start with giving them like a bit of, you know, best practices or security education on serverless, let's say, and give them some requirements for their project. Then you do threat modeling with them so that they design a system that's going to have fewer threats, right?
Yeah.
And then we're in the IDE supporting them. And like, I feel like if we do security the whole way through as much as we can, by the time we get to the end, we should have a much nicer product to begin with.
Yeah, that's brilliant. The way you visualized that a modern software development tool that we all need to have, that actually is an assistant to the software developers, right? So one idea that came to my mind as you're explaining it is, for example, before you buy, right, there is any harmful product, there's a statutory warning. Cigarette smoking is injurious to your health, right? So anytime I'm trying to bring in, let's say, a OS, like an open source code, maybe there is a statutory warning that comes that, you know what, these are the vulnerabilities that exist in it, and it's been exploited 5 different times on these different hacks, right? So all of a sudden, the developer who's sitting there knows, instead of doing it post facto in the vulnerability, right? I'm like, you're actually doing it while it's being created, that beware of these vulnerabilities that are coming in. Sometimes you are required, that particular open source might be required because it brings in a functionality that your business requires, right? Maybe then you can put compensatory mechanism around any vulnerabilities that it has, right? So this is the holy grail of how shifting left, talk about shifting left, getting a sidekick to the developers as they develop, right? So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the DevOps folks call it fast feedback. So
Fast
us security folks, we want to get them that feedback as soon as we can. And like having an awesome dashboard for the AppSec person is very, very valuable. But if I can help the developers, like you said, assist them early as we can, like we'll get better results and they like us better. When I come in at the end and I tell them that their baby's ugly, no one's really pleased with me. But if I've told them at the beginning, your baby will be so beautiful if you include multi-factor authentication and you salt and hash your passwords, or whatever the things are that will make their app, their baby beautiful and secure, we're more likely to get what we want. And like tools help us do this. And we both work at vendors, so we both have a bit of bias, but I have to say, my life would have been hell doing full-time AppSec without tools. Like, I can't imagine doing it all manually. And the tools are so much better now than when I started.
Right, right. Yeah, totally. The innovation that's coming in is amazing. Just if you look across the tech spectrum, right? Trying to catch up with the innovation, the speed with the software development is happening. And then many of them are even using artificial intelligence. As much as it is a buzzword, some companies are doing cool work in AI. We'd like to pride ourselves of that as well. But you're right. I think tooling is such an essential part of solving problems like this, right? Anything else that you'd like to add, Tanya? I know, like you are exposed to so many different uh, uh, communities, right? You get to learn from some of the best and contribute to the dialogue, right? Anything else you'd like to add to the conversation here?
I feel like I just want to highlight an awesome thing you said. Like, I like to view us as like the helpers of the software developers. Like, we're assisting them and we're supporting them, right? And I think that security is changing, like as an industry, from we're going to hit them with big sticks till they do as we say, to now you're my customer, I serve you, I assist you, I'm going to help you do your job securely. And that's not a tool thing, that's like a mindset change, but I'm seeing more and more and more, and it's awesome.
That's very good. Yeah.
I think it's the way to go.
That's the way to go. I think there's way too much friction between these software developers and the application security teams now, right? I know one of the hottest topics, if I were to choose, if whenever we are in like Purple Book community, when we talk about these different things, right? We ask them, what would you like to talk about? One of the things that is top of mind for many of them is just how do I reduce the friction between developers and security teams, right? So any tool, even there, that enables frictionless collaboration between, because if you see talking about tools, AppSec teams, they have their own set of favorite tools that they want, and developers have their own set of tools, right? How do you enable collaboration between them in a seamless way so that people can fix whatever they want? Developers are comfortable with Jira, they fix a problem, and then it automatically gets reflected back into the AppSec tools. And then consequently, whatever risk is associated with that particular release goes down, right? So things like that. I agree. One, I think is part of it is the mindset. The other one is the tools that these people use, right? That's part of the friction.
Let the devs help you pick the tool. I really like involving them because they'll ask tons of questions I didn't think of. Well, they'll be like, oh, does it work with this? I'm like, oh yeah, does it work with that? I want to know that. That's a great question.
Right, right. Yeah. Very good. I think this is it's a change. It's a small shift done at the right time, makes a huge difference later on. So very good. Yeah, very good. So for us, I'm like, I see we are at the time now, right? As I said, I'm like with you, Tanya, we can have 3 more sessions and still not be done with the insights for a conversation like this. So I really appreciate the conversation that we've had here. We started off with talking about the big challenges in application security, and we talked about how to use a set of rules and then use tools to basically automate those rules. And then you talked about changing the mindsets of people so that we go from not thinking about a problem after the baby is born, but actually do it before the baby is even born, right? So the baby that comes out is healthier when it comes out, right? Ready to fight the world and not vulnerable to any thing that comes from outside, right? So that's fantastic. I really appreciate the insights that we've had. I look forward to another session with you. Let's plan one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having Raj.